The first thing people noticed at the park that afternoon was not the laughter of children, or the warm breeze brushing through the trees, but the way a powerful woman in a tailored coat suddenly sat down on the lap of a tired-looking man on a wooden bench, her breath uneven, her eyes searching the paths behind her, as if she were running from something she could not outrun. The man froze for half a second, surprised and confused, before instinct took over and he wrapped one arm around her shoulders and whispered softly, almost without thinking, "Easy, I've got you." In that moment, two broken lives crossed in a way neither of them could have ever planned. For Daniel Harper, life had become a routine of survival. Every morning began before sunrise, when the city was still quiet and forgiving. He would carefully wake his 6-year-old daughter Lily, dress her in clothes laid out the night before, and walk her to school with a backpack that was always slightly too big for her small frame. Daniel's wife had passed away 3 years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving him with grief he never fully learned how to express and responsibilities he never imagined carrying alone. He worked as an assistant groundskeeper for a corporate office park, a job that paid just enough to keep food on the table and rent paid on time, but never enough to feel secure. Daniel didn't complain much. He had learned that life didn't pause to hear your reasons. Still, there were nights when exhaustion settled into his bones, and he wondered if he was failing Lily by not being more, not earning more, not smiling more. He loved her fiercely, but love didn't always quiet the fear that crept in during the dark hours when bills sat unpaid on the kitchen counter. The park across the street from Lily's school was Daniel's refuge. After work, he often brought her there, watching her run across the grass while he sat on the same bench every evening, letting the day slowly fade. It was simple, predictable, and safe. Or at least, it was supposed to be. On that particular day, Lily had begged him to stay just a little longer. The sun was beginning to dip, casting golden light across the playground, and Daniel agreed, grateful for her laughter echoing through the air. He didn't notice the woman walking quickly along the path until she stopped abruptly in front of him, her face pale, her posture tense. Before he could even ask if she was okay, she sat down on his lap, pulling her coat close, her voice barely audible as she said, "Please." Just for a moment, Daniel's heart raced. He was a man who avoided attention, who lived quietly, and now every instinct told him to panic. But when he felt the slight tremble in her shoulders and saw the fear flicker in her eyes, something deeper stirred inside him. He tightened his arm around her and leaned in, his voice low and steady. "Easy, I've got you." From a distance, they looked like a couple sharing a quiet moment. Up close, it was clear this was something else entirely. A few seconds later, a man walked past them, scanning the benches with sharp eyes, frustration written across his face. When he finally disappeared down another path, the woman exhaled slowly, the tension draining from her body as if she had been holding her breath for years. She apologized immediately, scrambling to stand, embarrassment flooding her face. Daniel shook his head gently, telling her it was okay, that she was safe now. She introduced herself as Evelyn Carter, her voice composed but tired. Daniel didn't recognize the name then, but he would soon learn that Evelyn was the CEO of the very company whose grounds he maintained every day. A woman admired publicly for her success and authority, yet privately trapped in a past she hadn't fully escaped. Evelyn's ex-partner had been controlling, manipulative, and relentless. Even after their separation, he found ways to insert himself into her life, using public appearances and unexpected encounters to remind her that he still believed he owned a piece of her. The park visit was supposed to be a quiet break from meetings and pressure, but seeing him there had sent her into panic. Daniel listened without interrupting, his attention divided between Evelyn's words and Lily's laughter nearby. He didn't offer advice or judgment, he simply listened. And in a world where Evelyn was constantly surrounded by people who wanted something from her, that quiet understanding felt like relief. They parted ways that evening with a polite goodbye, neither expecting to see the other again. But life has a way of circling back when something unfinished lingers in the air. Over the next few weeks, Daniel noticed subtle changes at work. His supervisor seemed kinder, his hours more consistent. Then one morning, Daniel was called into an office he had only ever cleaned after hours. Evelyn was there, dressed professionally, her expression warm but serious. She thanked him for what he had done at the park, not just for helping her hide, but for treating her like a human being rather than a title. Evelyn learned about Lily, about Daniel's struggles, about the weight he carried silently every day, and Daniel learned that Evelyn's confidence was something she had built brick by brick to protect herself, not something she was born with. They were different in every outward way, yet connected by shared vulnerability that as weeks turned into months. Evelyn found excuses to visit the grounds more often, sometimes bringing coffee, sometimes just stopping to talk. Daniel found himself opening up in ways he hadn't since his wife passed away. He talked about his fears of failing Lily, of never moving forward. Evelyn talked about loneliness at the top, about how success often came with isolation. Their bond deepened slowly, cautiously, like two people walking across thin ice, but trusting that each step might hold. When Evelyn's ex resurfaced again, attempting to intimidate her publicly, Daniel stood beside her, not with aggression, but with unwavering presence. For the first time, Evelyn didn't feel small. Meanwhile, Daniel's life began to shift. Evelyn encouraged him to apply for a facilities management course the company sponsored, something he never would have considered himself worthy of. With her support, he found confidence he didn't know he had. He studied late at night after Lily slept, driven by a new sense of purpose. The transformation wasn't instant or easy. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, nights when Daniel felt overwhelmed. But each time he remembered that moment on the bench, when someone needed him and he was enough. Slowly, he became more than someone just surviving. He became someone growing. Evelyn, too, changed. She began setting boundaries, standing firm against her ex's manipulation, and reclaiming parts of herself she had buried beneath her ambition. With Daniel and Lily, she found warmth and simplicity that reminded her why success meant nothing without peace. Years later, the park bench still stood where it always had, worn but steady. Daniel now walked past it in a pressed shirt and confident stride, Lily by his side, chatting about school. Evelyn often joined them, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. The past no longer chased her. Daniel no longer doubted his worth. That simple whisper, spoken in a moment of instinctive kindness, had changed everything. It reminded them both that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it sits quietly on a park bench and says, "I've got you." If this story touched your heart, let it remind you that small acts of kindness can change lives in ways we never expect. If you believe in second chances, quiet courage, and the power of compassion, please like this video and subscribe to Kindness Talks. Your support helps us share more stories that inspire, heal, and remind us all that even in our weakest moments, we can be someone else's strength.